Good morning, and I hope that your spring break was really great. As we come back, we're going to be doing some reviewing this week, and then we're going to look for a chapter test sometime next week. And one of the things that we will do is some sort of Zoom study session and perhaps even some individual study sessions if you need them. So we're going to begin by reviewing some things that you're going to see on a quiz tomorrow. So the reason I wanted you to watch this video is because I'm going to be going through some steps. I'm going to be going through some terminology, and you're going to see that all on a quiz. The notes that you take today, so I would take lots of notes, can be used on the quiz. Do not use your book, but you can certainly use the notes from today. So we're going to begin at the very, very beginning. So if you would turn to 9.1, which is page, looks like 499, and we were working on square roots. So I'm just going to do a few examples through these early chapters, then I'll land on the recent 2 lessons that we did, just to remind you of what we've been working on. So when we talked about square roots, there was a little bit of terminology in that, and we have this thing right here. Now I will tell you on the quiz, it gets confusing because they only give you this part of it. And that just is the Sycamore program only has that symbol. They don't have the full radical symbol. Not sure why. But you're going to see this and just assume that it is the same as that. So anytime on those quizzes on Sycamore, just make sure to take note of that. So when we see this is called a radical. So make sure you remember that terminology. And when we see a number inside of there, what we want to know is what 2 numbers multiplied together will give us this. And in this case, it's 2. So 2 times 2 would equal 4. So the number, the radical of 4 is going to be the 2. So I want you to take a minute, just reviewing, and I want you to figure out what the square roots of these 2 numbers are. So hit a pause, and then once you've had a chance to do those, then come back, or perhaps you know them really quickly in your head. So if you're back, the answer to this one, and I hope that you can see it on the screen, let me tip it down just a little, is going to be 9. 9 times 9 is 81. And 144, the answer is going to be 12. So if you see the symbol, it's called a radical, and here you know how to solve those. Now, it gets a little bit more confusing when we come up with something like this. We might have 50 in our radical. And this is where we have to simplify. So you might see on the quiz something that says simplify, or work these down as much as you can. And this is where you can actually begin to take this and put it in little pieces. So this one big house, I like to call this thing a house. This one big house can become smaller houses. And our goal is to try to find a number that will reduce down so that we can get rid of part of this radical anyway. So if we were to break this down to, let's see, 2 times 25, that would actually give us a number that would break down. And so all we have to do at this point then is have the square root of 2 times the square root of 25. And we know that this will break down to 5. And so we can get rid of that completely. But we can't just make it disappear. It's going to have to sit right outside. So when you have numbers like this, you want to break it down as much as you can, and then see if you can get rid of part of it. You may still have a radical left, and that's okay. So let's try a couple of those. So we're going to do the square root of 75, and we're going to do the square root of, let me think of another one, how about 200? All right, so take a minute, pause the video, and try to break these down into smaller pieces. That's the first step. Then you're going to see if you can drop a radical. So pause it, then come back, and we'll do these together. So if you're back, then I assume that you've done some work or you're just really confused on these. So let's take a look at this one first. Now it's going to be very similar to the one that we just did. So you can actually, and I always like to put my little arrows, you can actually break this down to 3 times 25 instead of the 2 times 25 that we had on the previous one. We know that this can be broken out into its own little house. And now we can get rid of that little house because 5 times 5 will get rid of it. Then we have 5 times the square root of 3. With 200, we want to again be thinking of, is there a number that will break out and help me to find a square root in there somewhere? And so if we break this one down, we would get 2 times 100. Now you could have done 8 times 25. But then you've got a problem because the 8 also could be broken down to 2 times 4. Then you've still got to deal with that. So we want to go with as high a number there as we can. We're going to do the same thing. Square root of 2 times the square root of 100. We can break this one out. It's kind of like breaking them out of jail. So we're going to break this guy out. And we're left with this 10 times the square root of 2 is the answer. So hopefully you remember how to do all of that. So now let's take a hop over to, let me see, that was not actually 9.1, 2, and 3. So let's go to 9.4, which is actually where we began the work on, if I can get there, where we began the work on quadratic functions. So if you remember quadratic functions, they actually have 4 pieces to them. And that's where you get the quad. So here are the 4 pieces. This isn't a question on the test. And then you're going to have possibly a y, possibly a 0 over there. So the 4 pieces are here, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's where you get the quad. And you've got that squared added in right there. That is going to give you 2 answers for x. And one of the things this is going to be asked on the quiz is to identify this guy right here. What is this? It's not a square. It's not a ziggity-zag. It's not a line. Instead, it is a parabola. Whoops. And a parabola is an object that is going to have 2 answers on x-axis. At least what we're doing right now with it is going to have the 2 answers. Now, one of the things that I'm going to quiz you on is the steps for getting one of these onto a graph. So in 9.4, and then I want to say maybe 9.6, it pops up again, we're learning how to get these onto a graph. And there are steps, and I want you to make sure you know those steps because you are going to be asked for those steps. So we are going to take a look at one of the class practices, and we have y equals 2x squared minus 4x minus 1. Now, the first step is to put this in standard form. It is in standard form. So over here, I'm going to put our steps. So make sure you are writing these down. Standard form. That means the x squared component goes first. The x component, the whole number, and then there's something on the other side. Now, just to make this look like all of our other problems, we're just going to put that y over there. So the first thing that we have to do is to put it in standard. The second thing that we have to do is find our a, b, and c. And in this one, our a is 2, our b is -4, and our c is -1. Now that we've got the a, b, and c, we can go to the third step, which is to find the vertex. And if you remember, that formula is -b over 2a. Now, if you're writing all this down, you're going to do great on the quiz. I'm not trying to trick you with anything. I just want to make sure you remember all of this. This is our review as we get back into the school weeks. So what we're going to do now is take these, plug them in there. So the -b, it's already a negative. I've got a negative here. That's actually going to turn it into a positive. And that's going to be 4. And then 2 times a is going to be another 4. So my vertex is going to run down through 1. So I find my vertex and it equals 1. Then step 4 is going to be the table of values. And one question that you're going to be asked is, where does this 1 go on the table of values? Well, it should go in the middle. So I'm going to put the 1, stretch that, right here. Then I'm going to put numbers on the other side. So I'm going to go up 2, 3, 0, -1. Next, what I'm going to do is take these numbers, plug them in for x, and see what they come out to be. Now, I always like to start with 0 because I just think it's the easiest, and I'm going to be left with -1. Then I'm going to stick the 1 in, and I'm going to have, so if I stick 1 in here, I'm going to have 2 minus 4 minus 1. And that is going to be -2 minus 3. Then we stick 2 in. And I wish I could hear you guys shouting if I did any of these wrong, but hopefully I'll find them, unlike last week. I think I heard from 3 or 4 of you that you were able to find my mistakes, so very good. Let's stick -1. So we're also going to have 2, but we're going to have plus 4 here, minus 1. So I'm going to have 6 minus 1 is 5. Then we'll stick 2 in. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. But then -4 times the 2 is going to make this minus 8. We're left with a -1. Here's where we're starting to see our mirror image. And then the 3 times 3 is 9, times 2 is 18. And this is going to be minus 12, so that's going to be 6 minus 1 is 5. There's our other mirror image. And then our last step is to plot our points. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this right here. so we can get our points plotted and have an idea of, if we don't remember what we're doing, this will help you to review and remember what you are doing. All right, so we know that our vertex is right here. So 1, -3, that should be our bottommost point. 2, -1, and 0, -1. And then 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and -1 and 5. And so it's going to be pretty narrow. And remember, we are looking, I always like to draw a little creature out of this. So this is going to be one with really long ears. So you can see those ears. But remember, I'm looking for where it crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to draw really big circles here, right where it crosses. And these I'm going to make a little smaller, more like freckles on our little friend. So here are where, this is his little mouth. I'm going to make his little mouth bigger since that's the vertex. I'm looking for where it crosses the x-axis. I'm not necessarily looking for these points, so don't get confused. They are probably fractional, and that's why they don't show up in here. So this is how you get your parabola. Where what we're looking for is where it crosses the x-axis. So that leads me to another point of vocabulary, well, not vocabulary, our mission in life. And we have talked about this all year long. Every single chapter we have a different mission in life. We have a different goal in life. We have a different focus in life. Our mission in life in chapter 9 is to find where x crosses, or excuse me, where the parabola, getting ahead of myself here, crosses the x-axis. It's going to cross in 2 places. So make sure you have 2 answers. All right. Now, the thing that we were finishing up with right before spring break was the methods of getting these answers that we need, the 2 x answers. And so the first one is you can put it on the graph, and we just put one on the graph. We figured out it's probably a fractional answer. Now the next one, the next method that we learned was by using the quadratic equation. And I think that I only asked what that is on the quiz. I can't remember. But the quadratic equation is what we used next. And if you don't remember what that is, I want you to turn to page 526. Or no, sorry, that's by graphing. I want you to turn to 533. And using the quadratic formula, so we have negative b plus or minus, and then we have, and I always have to look back at this to make sure I have it exactly right. This is the part that I get messed up sometime, over 2a. Did I do that right? Yes. And you look for your a, b, and c that you saw before. And so I don't have that equation in front of me, but let's do this one, 2x squared plus x minus 10. My a would be 2, my b would be 1, and my c would be negative 10. I plug those in here. And when we left for break, I think I mentioned that this is probably the easiest, my favorite way to do this. So let me just do it really quickly. So I'm going to put in here negative, I've got that 1, plus or minus, and 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 10 over, and then 2a, 4. Now let me just give us a little room here to work. And the way I get the two answers is right here. The first one I'm going to do, I'm going to add it. Second one, I'm going to subtract it. So negative 1, and then we have, I'm going to do plus. So 1 squared is 1, and then negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, times negative 10 is going to be 80. So negative 8 times negative 10 is going to be a positive 80, which is going to bring us to 81 over the 4. So this is 9. So I'm going to have negative 1 plus 9, which is going to be 8 over 4. So my first answer is 2. Then I'm going to have negative 1 minus 9, which is going to be negative 10 over 4. And you could reduce that to negative 5 over 2. Those are your two answers. Here's one of those fractional answers. Much easier to find this way than it is to find it on a graph. There's one more method that we're going to learn, and that's we're going to learn in the next chapter. It's the factoring. What we're going to be working on Wednesday is the inequalities. So we're going to have quadratic inequalities. So we're going to be shading either the face of our parabola or outside the face of the parabola. But we'll be looking at that on Wednesday. So you have a little bit of review that you're going to do. You need to take the notes from this quiz. Hopefully you have, or from this video, hopefully you wrote everything down. If you didn't, go back and watch it again. And then take the quiz. It is open note. And so I want you working on the quiz with your notes in front of you. You also need to do the work. Take a picture of it and upload it. There is a section to upload on Dropbox on Sycamore. So in addition to and you get a separate score for that. So it's like getting 2 quiz scores. It is mostly multiple choice. Some of the answers at the end, like give me the steps, things like that, you have to write in yourself. But it's already been put up on Sycamore. You have one retake of it. So if you get into it like last time and get called out and then get timed out, you should be able to go back and start over. But I think it does have you completely start over. So call me, text me, email me, Zoom me if you have questions, and let's keep plugging away. We're almost on Chapter 9. We'll take the test, and then we will move on to Chapter 10. So I will see you on Wednesday.